Post-Björk album. Post is the second studio album by Icelandic recording artist Björk, released on 13 June 1995 in the United Kingdom by One Little Indian and in the United States by Elektra Entertainment. Continuing the style developed on her first album debut 1993, Post features an eclectic mixture of electronic and dance styles such as techno, trip-hop, IDM, and house, but also ambient, jazz, industrial, and experimental music. Björk produced Post herself with co-producers including Nellee Hooper, 808 States Graham Massey, and former Massive Attack member Tricky. She wrote most of the songs after moving to London and intended the album to convey the city's pace, urban culture, and underground club culture. Although promotional issues arose before its release, the album reached #1 in Iceland, #2 in the United Kingdom, and #32 in the US. It was certified gold in New Zealand and Sweden, and platinum in Australia, Canada, the US, and the UK. 6 singles were released: Army of Me, Asobal, It's Oh So Quiet, Hyperballad, Possibly Maybe, and I Miss You, with 3 reaching the UK top 10. Their accompanying music videos were noted for their surrealism, themes of nature and technology, and artistic development of the medium. A remix album titled Telegram was released in 1996. During the album's commercial peak, Björk was overwhelmed by media attention and Post's promotional tour. She survived a murder attempt and caused controversy by assaulting a reporter. Björk would relocate to Spain away from the press and produce her next album, Homogenic 1997. Considered an important exponent of art pop, Post has been praised by critics for its ambition and timelessness. It was named one of the greatest albums of 1995 by numerous publications, and has since been named one of the greatest albums of all time by publications including Entertainment Weekly and Rolling Stone. Background and production. Björk released her previous studio album debut in 1993 on One Little Indian Records. A main element of debut's sound was its incorporation of dance music, reflecting the contemporary styles of England's underground club culture, with which Björk had established close ties as reflected in the remixes of the debut. Björk's adoption of the contemporary musical environment of London also included the burgeoning trip-hop scene of bands like Portishead. Nellee Hooper, who produced the album, had been a member of Bristol's Wild Bunch Collective, a group that took from acid jazz, funk, and hip-hop, and catalyzed the appearance of trip-hop. The production of debut was long and laborious, as it required Björk to realize her compositional ideas from the past 10 years in a creatively autonomous fashion. After debut's release, she was free to concentrate on her present life for new musical clues for her following album. Once again, she contacted Nellee Hooper to produce the album. He refused initially, encouraging her to produce the album herself, but agreed when she insisted. However, Björk agreed to co-produce along with other enlisted producers. To make it stay fresh, she had to think about other people being involved. With Hooper's confirmation, Björk commenced work on the album in late 1994 at the Compass Point Studios in Nassau. The picturesque locale inspired Björk to meld the recording process with the exotic natural environment. Biographer Mark Pitlick writes, "The tales surrounding these recording sessions are appropriately evocative." For example, Rolling Stone wrote that for her vocals, Björk extended her mic cord to a beach so she could sing to the sea. Additionally, the first version of Cover Me was recorded entirely from a nearby cave. For this record, Björk incorporated shelved songs she wrote in Manchester with 808 States Graham Massey, which had preceded the recording sessions for debut. These included Army of Me and The Modern Things, which had become live staples over the summer, and did not need to undergo extensive transformations at Compass Point. Massey stated, "With Army of Me we wanted to try something that was quite hard and techno-y. I'm not sure how she wrote those lyrics so fast, but I remember that song being almost instantaneous. We kind of knocked that off in one day and then started on the modern things the same day and finished that the next. Although the album was supposed to be delivered the day after she returned from the Bahamas, Björk felt it was not yet complete and decided to continue its production back in London. She enlisted a new team of engineers and programmers and spent the next months tweaking, rearranging, and sometimes completely re-recording her pre-existing tracks. Ultimately, it was the inclusion of more real instruments that resuscitated Post for Björk. Björk continued to compose songs such as Isobel, which was created while she was visiting Reykjavik for Christmas, before bringing it back to Hooper's studio. The song's lyrics were written in collaboration with Icelandic poet Esjon, which was his first songwriting experience. Esjon would become a frequent collaborator, intrigued by his work as part of Massive Attack and later by his debut Max and Key. Björk also asked trip-hop artist Tricky to assist in producing the album. An admirer of her voice, Tricky agreed, on the condition that he would work on 2 tracks on her album, and she would contribute 2 vocals for his album. Their collaboration resulted in the Post songs Enjoy and Headphones, in addition to Keep Your Mouth Shut and Yoga, which appeared on Tricky's 1996 studio album, Nearly God. The track that underwent the most extensive change was I Miss You, an old song from the debut era, the result of the input of Howie Bernstein, a protege of Hooper and an aspiring programmer, who gave the song its Latin-tinged rhythm. Back in London, Björk contacted old standby Talvin Singh to record additional percussion parts for it. Fellow former Sugar Cubes member Einar Orn Benediktsson was also contacted to play the trumpet on Enjoy. Renowned English sessionist Gary Barnacle was enlisted to play the saxophone. Although he had not been involved in music for a long time, Brazilian composer Eumir Deodato immediately agreed to participate on the album at Björk's request. Björk decided to contact him after being impressed by his arrangements of a rare Milton Nascimento song called Travessia. Deodato's presence as composer and conductor immediately bolstered hyperballad You've Been Flirting Again and Isobel. This addition of strings, brass, and percussion elements gave Post the balance Björk felt her original recordings had lacked. It's Oh So Quiet was the last track to be recorded. By the time the album was finished in April 1995, the list of co-producers included Björk, Hooper, Bernstein, Massey, and Tricky. Björk has said, "The people I collaborated with were all people I was hanging out with in clubs in London. I had known them all for a while before we ended up working together." Composition, style, and influences. Björk's website described Post as a bit of a bolder side of Björk, who now had ventured all the way from Iceland to England and was exploring the faster pace and big city life that this new country brought. This album became influenced of that and became more adventurous and club-friendly as a contrast to the shy first album debut. Likewise, The Guardian wrote in 2011 that Post tapped into the vortex of multicultural energy that was mid-90s London, where she had relocated and where strange hybrids such as jungle and trip-hop were bubbling. Noted for its eclectic nature, Björk described Post as musically promiscuous and spastic. It is considered by some to be the quintessential Björk release, due to its protean form more than any of her other albums and its wide emotional palette. While the album is recognized as an experimental work, it is also characterized by its accessibility and pop framework. As a result, Post and Björk's body of work in general is categorized as an important release of the art pop genre, while also being described with related tags such as experimental pop and avant pop. Reflecting on this, Nick Coleman of The Independent wrote in 2003, "The genius of art pop resides not, as is often supposed, in unusual trousers and close study of the life of Oscar Wilde, but in a musician's willingness to take a basic pop structure and subject it to a lot of naughty formal tinkering. It is, if you like, a way of making." Jim Farber, reviewing the album in 1995 for Entertainment Weekly, considered Post to be a connecting point between industrial disco, ambient trance, and catchy synth pop. When asked if this variety of genres was intentional, Björk replied, "Yes, I'm very aware of that. I've got very many sides to me." She recognizes Post as darker and more aggressive than debut, and has identified independence, strength, and instinct as its lyrical themes. The balance between synthetic and organic elements in the album generated through the combination of electronic and real instruments is a recurring characteristic of Björk's output. In 1999, Vibe stated, fusing techno, industrial ambient, punk, and the rarefied yet tuneful spheres of art rock, Björk explores a jungle of tones supported by her eternally buoyant voice from Mars. Part of the album's innovation was Björk's further embrace of electronic instrumentation, an interest established in debut, which Trebelzine.com has said that Post melded alternative dance and electronic with a graceful flow. While IDM and trip-hop influences were present in debut, Post is characterized by Björk's fuller incorporation of these genres. In an article celebrating the 20th anniversary of its release, Stereogum stated that the album had enough debut-era dance pop in it that it still sounded like the work of the same person, but also blew Björk's previously established sound out into something way bigger and more impressive. Mark Pitlick considered that, in a time when electronic music was still considered cold, austere, or inhuman, it was unorthodox for Björk to be playing with electronic elements, the stuff of science fiction soundtracks, Kraftwerk Teutonics, and orbital-style blippiness, and using them to express a closeness to nature. The Rolling Stone review stated that influences of jazz fusion were also noted by a contemporary review by the New York Times. In a 1995 interview with Pulse, Björk was reluctant to listing other female vocalists as an inspiration, stating, "I've never really compared myself to other people. Not because I'm too big-headed or I've got a minority complex, but because I know I just can't sing like anyone else." Nevertheless, in 2015 Björk acknowledged that as she grew older, she understood that music like Kate Bush has really influenced her. The Pulse article also read, "A lot of Björk's early influences were books George Bataille's Story of the Eye, Mikhail Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita, and films Tampopo, Star Wars, The Tin Drum available internationally. But talk about Iceland and you're getting to the heart of the matter, the source of her spirited outlook on life." In 1996, when asked about the album's musical influences, Björk stated, "I'm influenced by everything, by books, by the weather, by the water, by my shoes, if they are comfortable or not, everything." Songs. The album opens with Army of Me, a song so menacing and inorganic sounding that, according to the New York Times, it verges on industrial rock. It is an aggressive technopop song with elements of trip-hop. Dedicated to Björk's younger brother, the song's lyrics are, according to Björk herself, about telling someone who is full of self-pity and doesn't have anything together to get a life and stand up, as she sings, "And if you complain once more you'll meet an army of me," hyper ballad, which incorporates a spectrum of electronic and orchestral styles, has been described as a love song penned by NME. Wrote that its music altered from gentle folktronica to drum and bass-tinted acid house, an attempt to reflect the song's lyrics, which are about the art of not forgetting about yourself. In them, Björk describes living at the top of a mountain and going to a cliff at sunrise. She throws objects off the cliff while pondering her own suicide. The ritual allows her to exercise darker thoughts and return to her partner. Hyperballad is followed by The Modern Things, a song that, in a magical realist tone, playfully posits the theory that technology has always existed, waiting in mountains for humans to catch up. Interview described it in 1995 as a spooky tune, noting the odd scratchings at the end of the track. In his 2000 book Jung and the Postmodern, The Interpretation of Realities, Christopher Hawke described this effect at the end as when a record player has reached the end of an analog vinyl record and the needle is stuck as the disc continues going round, and considered this trick to be a case of postmodernism, serving as an example of the relationship between the present and past. In a startling shift in style, The big band track It's Oh So Quiet covers a German composition made famous by Betty Hutton. It has been described as a palate cleanser during the course of the record. Björk included the song just to make it absolutely certain that the album would be as schizophrenic as possible, that every song would be a shock. The following track, Enjoy, a song concerning the links between sex and fear, has been considered as decidedly trippy, and Post's most abrasive track. NME described it in its 1995 review as a dark and deranged techno thing. Over military drums and squalls of noise, Björk sings about her hedonistic tendencies. The orchestral interlude You've Been Flirting Again, like the previous track Enjoy, features mysterious or open-ended lyrics. They are an attempt to describe the nature of flirting, which is ambiguous and slippery, the playfulness of the song's title contrasting with the weightiness of its words. Isobel is a string-laden, orchestral trip-hop song. Craig McLean of The Face called the track Broadway on breakbeats. Conceived by Björk as part autobiography, part storytelling. Its lyrics concern Isobel, a woman magically born in a forest who finds people in the city a bit too clever for her, eventually retreating back to nature and sending them a message of instinct through trained moths. Inspired by South American literature, particularly Gabriel Garcia Marquez, the track's lyrics discuss the duality between reason and emotions, between intuition and intellect, in Björk's words, asking how 20th century civilization clashes with nature, and, in places like Iceland and Thailand, people really believe they can have a TV remote. Possibly Maybe is an ambient track that fuses trip-hop and chill-out music. Björk has said that it was the first unhappy song she wrote, stating in 1997, "That was very hard for me. I was ashamed writing a song that was not giving hope." Its lyrics document the various stages of Björk's ill-fated relationship with Stefan Sednayahui. With the track, De Vries created a vinyl crackling ambience full of glissando strings and leaden, muted bass. The slide guitar heard in the background of the song was originally intended to be its focal point, as Björk initially strived for an ambient country sound inspired by Chris Isaak's Wicked Game. I Miss You was described in 1997 and trying to lure him into it. But it is also an admiration thing from me to him. The album ends with the experimental Headphones, an ambient track, featuring just for headphones studio tricks. It has been described as a chiming, somnolent dip into Björk's heavy-lidded pre-dream state. Its lyrics were written as a thank you to Graham Massey, who would make compilation cassettes, The Sound of Sound, resonances, frequencies, silences, and such. The music worship thing. Title and artwork. Björk chose the title post for two reasons. Firstly, it refers to the fact that all the songs on the album were written after her move to England, while the songs on debut were songs she had written during the previous 10 years of her life in Iceland. In a 1996 interview, Björk said, "I always knew it would be two albums, and that's why I called them debut and post, before and after." Secondly, the title was inspired by Björk's desire to communicate with friends and family back in Iceland, giving post the additional meaning of mail. The album cover was photographed by Sednayahui. It shows Björk standing in a London street, her pale skin and dark hair contrasting with the vivid colors of the Japanese-inspired signs behind her. Designer Paul White of Me Company, who had been a frequent collaborator since the Sugar Cubes surrounded her with giant postcards to represent communication with friends and family. Björk also said that my musical heart was scattered at the time, and I wanted the cover to show that. Me Company designed the artwork, while Martin Gardner modeled the lotus flower used in the album's booklet and packaging. The jacket Björk wears, shown on the cover, was inspired by Royal Mail airmail envelopes, referencing the album's title. It was specially crafted from envelope paper called Tyvek by designer Hüseyin Çağlayan. Björk was a friend of Çağlayan and an admirer of his designs, modeling for him in September 1995. The jacket is displayed under glass at Hard Rock Reykjavik and was part of a 2015 MoMA retrospective on Björk. Vice has identified the airmail jacket look as one of the ultimate fashion moments of Björk's career. A shot of Björk surrounded by silver balls was planned as the cover, but it was scrapped in favor of something more poppy. The photo would later appear in a 1995 article for The Face. Release and promotion. Post was released on 13 June 1995 as a 12-record, CD, and compact cassette. It was issued on One Little Indian Records in the United Kingdom and Elektra Records in the United States and Canada. Polydor Records issued Post in Australia and Japan, also releasing the European edition of the album. Lead single. It debuted at number 13 on the UK singles chart, spending 3 weeks in the UK Top 75. I Miss You was released as Post's sixth and final single on 24 February 1997. It is among her worst-performing singles in the UK, but it rose to number 1 on the US Billboard Hot Dance Club Play. Promotional setbacks. The music video for Army of Me was removed from MTV playlist before it aired because its ending depicted Björk bombing an art museum. The Oklahoma City bombing happened at this time. Author Mark Pitlick wrote that this foreshadowed a string of unlucky events that would further hinder Post's unveiling. An unsourced sample by Robin Rimbaud, prominently heard throughout Possibly Maybe, resulted in a lawsuit demanding a co-songwriter credit. After Rimbaud's label New Electronica refused a sample clearance compensation of £1,000 from One Little Indian founder Derek Burkett, Björk and Burkett resolved to destroy over 100,000 copies of the album to create a new version without the sample. However, at the request of Rimbaud, New Electronica later gave Björk full permission to use the sample. In a following lawsuit, musician Simon Fisher sued Hooper and Björk over writing credits in debut 1993, but these charges were cleared by Judge Robin Jacob. These events resulted in the strangest promotional tour anyone could have ever envisioned. In the week since Post had been released, Björk had seen her album deleted, her video banned, and 2 separate lawsuits brought against her. One Little Indian were also better prepared to promote the album, scheduling a string of European and American tour dates from the beginning of July into late August. In addition, Björk also appeared on several music magazines. Telegram. In November 1996, Björk released the often delayed remix project Telegram, which contained reworkings of several songs from Post, with her voice re-recorded. Telegram has been described as effectively a completely new album. Author Mark Pitlick writes, promises of a post-remix album had been circulating since the release of Army of Me in April 1995. That's why it's funny to call it a remix album. It's like the opposite. Telegram is more stark, naked. Not trying to make it pretty or peaceable for the ear. Just a record I would buy myself. Björk also declared that the release of Telegram meant the end of an era consisting of debut and post. The compilation was well received by music critics. Stephen Thomas Erlewine of AllMusic wrote, Telegram works as an excellent introduction to techno for alternative pop fans unsure where to begin exploring. Douglas Walk of CMJ New Music Monthly felt the music of Telegram was actually better than Post, describing the tracks as well-considered reworkings. The Rolling Stone Album Guide gave the album 3.5 stars and stated it shed new light on the songs. Telegram spent 5 weeks on the Billboard 200 chart, peaking at number 66. In the UK, it peaked at number 59, spending 2 weeks on the album's chart. Aftermath. During this period of commercial success, the extensive media attention and a world tour of 105 dates began to affect Björk, as she was unable to take a break from her stardom. She repeatedly complained about the intrusiveness of tabloids and reporters. In February 1996, whilst on tour, Björk arrived at Bangkok International Airport with her son Sindri after a long-haul flight. While the pair walked through the arrival terminals, reporter Julie Kaufman approached them and said, "Welcome to Bangkok." This angered Björk, who charged at Kaufman and wrestled her to the ground. The incident was reported around the world, as did the suicide of Björk's stalker, Ricardo Lopez, which caused a media sensation. On 12 September, Lopez sent a letter bomb rigged with sulfuric acid to Björk's residence in London, returned home and filmed his suicide. After viewing his video diary, police contacted Scotland Yard, who intercepted the package without incident. To record in privacy away from the unwanted interest of the press, Björk's tour drummer Trevor Morris offered his studio in Malaga, Spain for Björk to record what would be Homogenic. Björk had begun the first sessions of the album in 1996 at her Maida Vale residence, after the completion of the extensive post-tour gave her an urgent need to write new songs as a form of therapy. In 2005, the UNICEF charity record Army of Me remixes and covers was released. It is a collection of 17 eclectic remixes of Army of Me. All profits went directly to the charity to assist the victims of the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. Live at Shepherd's Bush Empire was released as a VHS in November 1998, containing the last performance of the post-tour, which took place at Shepherd's Bush Empire in February 1997. Post Live, a live album consisting of songs recorded during the post-tour, was included in the 2003 box set Live box. The 2002 box set Family Tree includes demos and alternate versions of various tracks off the album. Post has been reissued several times, adapting to different formats such as colored records, 108-ig vinyl, and jeweled disc. A remastered version of the album in surround sound was included in the box set Surrounded, which was released in 2006 on Elektra Records. In 2012, Universal Japan issued a limited edition of Debut and Post together as one compilation. In 2008, when asked how she felt about the album, in retrospect, Björk reflected, "I was kinda surprised how the odd spastic thing of the album had actually aged well." Music videos. Post came fully equipped with 6 music videos, one for each single, many of which have gone on to become classics, most notably It's Oh So Quiet and Army of Me. At the time of its release, music videos were beginning to be used as an art form, and Björk's visual output during this period and her career in general have become a clear example of the medium's artistic legitimation. Spanish writer Estibaliz Perez Espirila has identified recurring motifs and themes through Björk's videography. These include nature and a magnified depiction of Björk. Surrealism and technology have also been identified as recurring features in Björk's visual output of this period. David Ehrlich of Time Out considered her as one of the first artists to meaningfully explore the aesthetic and semiotic value of CG and its relationship to the videos. Writing for Paste, Alexa Carrasco felt, "Björk has created some of the most beautiful and weird videos to ever play on MTV." For some of these videos, she recruited Mitchell Gondry, who she previously worked with for Human Behavior, and Stéphane Sednoy, who also did Big Time Sensuality. All of Post's music videos were included on the 1998 video release Volume N and its 2002 reissue Volume N+. They also appear on Greatest Hits Volume N 199-3-2003, a release that includes the videos featured on Volume N and Volume N+. They are also featured on video compilations of its directors, including the work of director Mitchell Gondry and the work of director Spike Jonze, all of them from 2003. The music videos and the pink boots Björk wears in Hyper Ballad, the work of Belgian designer Walter van Berendonck, were displayed in the Museum of Modern Art, New York City, as part of a 2015 exhibition focused on Björk. They were also featured in the 2016 exhibition, Björk Digital, which premiered at Carrie Age Works as part of the Vivid Sydney Festival. Army of Me, It's Oh So Quiet. Gondry directed the video for Army of Me, which takes place in cyberpunk environment, reflecting the industrial sonority of the song. In the video, Björk quests to rescue her loved one from an art museum. She is seen driving a massive truck, which has been described as alternately looking like an overgrown SUV and a science fiction tank. Björk said that the video is probably the most realistic way of expressing what situation I'm in. All these people trying to take things away from me. Army of Me is so much about me actually learning that I have to defend myself. At the 1995 MTV Video Music Awards, Army of Me was nominated for Best Special Effects in a Video and the International Viewers' Choice Award. The music video for Isobel, directed by Gondry, was filmed for 2 days in a forest in Dalgelly, near Angolan, Wales. The crew used a Michelis 35 camera with VAR speed to be able to rewind the camera and do superimpositions and masks inspired by Georges Méliès's work. The final music video was projected in 35mm for the crew in a cinema in London. With its varying exposures, lighting effects, and monochromatic scheme, it resembles an early film. Isobel represents the story of the title character Björk envisioned with S. John. It tells the story of a wild child discovering urban culture through installations of toy fighter planes over lush superimposed imagery. Like in the lyrics, where Björk takes the role of narrator and protagonist, she plays two different parts in the music video. Björk is seen as the Isobel who weaves and composes this world and this story on her organ, and as the Isobel who inhabits this primal world. Ed Gonzalez of the same publication described it as Gene Epstein, Ian Kabuki horror. Sal Cinquemani of Slant magazine included Isobel in his list of the top 10 Björk music videos, describing it as surreal and visually striking. Spike Jonze directed the music video for It's Oh So Quiet, a homage to Hollywood's Technicolor musicals that drew inspiration from Busby Berkeley and Jack Demme's The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Like Demme, Jonze mines the magical from the mundane as he transforms a drab auto shop into the location where Björk dances and sings with a full dance company, an attempt to reflect the exuberance of her vocal performance. The whispered verse sections of the track are filmed in slow motion, much as Tsai's cinematography takes place over an extended time frame, while the shouted musical sections reflect back on ordinary or lived reality in a manner that denaturalizes the banal, turning it, more than the fantasy of musical spectacle, into something surreal. The popularity of the music video made It's Oh So Quiet one of Björk's most ubiquitous tracks, and was considered her first breakthrough on MTV. It was nominated for the Best Music Video Award at the 38th Annual Grammys, losing to Janet and Michael Jackson's Scream. At the 1996 MTV Video Music Awards, the video was awarded the Best Choreography in a Video VMA and was nominated for Best Female Video, Breakthrough Video, Best Direction, Best Art Direction in a Video, and International Viewers' Choice Award MTV Europe. Hyperballad I Miss You, Miss You, I Ballad I Miss You. The music video for Hyperballad, also directed by Gondry, has been described as a techno dream visual story full of flashing lights, buzzing static, and holograms. It shows Björk as a character running through a landscape that simulates that of a computer game, only to throw herself off a cliff. The clip is an attempt to reflect the song's story, so Gondry depicted Björk lying down as a dead body, with a holographic image of her singing superimposed on her. Rick Pointer writes, White metamorphosed her head. The video demonstrated the musician's embrace of the computer's shape-shifting powers. Sedney Alyui directed the music video for Possibly Maybe, despite the song is being about his failed relationship with Björk. Björk and Sedney Alyui had previously worked together in the music video for Big Time Sensuality. In the clip, she appears as a goddess floating out from a numinous light-streaked background. Sedney Alyui is known for having a particularly filmic technique for each of his clips. In Possibly Maybe, the use of blacklighting makes Björk glow sensuously and perversely. It was conceived in a theatrical way. Nearly all of the scenes were filmed in the same space, which is transformed with changes in the Massey scene. The style of Possibly Maybe scenery and Björk's wardrobe reference East Asian imagery, and a Japanese traditional doll is featured as Björk's only accompaniment. As a silent witness, it is the object on which the protagonist casts reflections on her own identity. Regarding the video, said Nellee said, "Her song and my video were a way of saying things to each other that we couldn't say otherwise." For the I Miss You music video, Björk contacted John Kricfalusi of Spunko. The animation was directed by Eric Weiss. The first edition of Telegraph, a fan magazine directed by S. John, read, "To the horror of parents everywhere, two of the most disturbed minds in show business." It was promptly censored on MTV because of its nudity and violence towards the end. Critical reception. Upon its release, Post received universal acclaim from music critics. Lorraine Ollie of Rolling Stone praised the album for providing a much-needed escape route from the alternative rock offerings of the early 1990s and for successfully merging disparate styles. She concluded, "When Post comes to an end, it feels like getting back from a good vacation. The last thing you want to do is re-enter the real world." Writing for Entertainment Weekly, Jim Farber stated that despite Post's bizarre combination of diverse genres, the conviction of Björk's delivery and assuring hooks made her most surreal passages as relatable as Moon June standards. He felt that Björk reinvented that tradition, constructing standards for the cyber age. Joy Press, who reviewed the album for the New York Times, praised the album for not being a play-safe sequel to Debut, pointing out that Björk had followed her most wonderfully wayward impulses. Los Angeles Times critic Richard Cronlund felt that Post was an often heady mix of trendiness and nostalgia that was capable of transcending Björk's self-consciousness. Greg Kot of the Chicago Tribune found the album's backing tracks to be even more varied and unusual than on Debut, describing Björk as an extraterrestrial voice rummaging around in a sonic toy box. Spinsbury Walters felt the album was an improvement over its predecessor, stating its songs were stronger, more developed, and less reliant on Björk's wide-eyed delivery. He concluded that, after years of no alternative fascist, grunge domination, it's heartening that Björk and producer co-songwriter Nellee Hooper stayed true to themselves and created another highly personal album that has a chance of interrupting the airwave flow of whiny rockers with little imagination. Writing for MTV Online, Lou Stathis wrote that it's mostly Björk's wacky, mind-altered perspective that makes postmodern pop music at once both baffling and engaging. He believed the album was a rewarding experience for both the casual consumer as well as the serious listener, also pointing out that it not only sounds good while you're listening to it, but it leaves you feeling good when it's over, too. Robert Christgau, reviewing the album for The Village Voice, was less enthusiastic. He found that the album's eccentric instrumentation and electronic timbres failed to compensate for its lack of groove and was unmoved by Björk's lyrics, which he said might hit home harder if she'd grown up speaking the English she'll die singing, but probably wouldn't. Accolades. By the end of 1995, Post appeared on the year-end lists of several publications, including The Face, Les Inrecuptibles, Magic, Melody Maker, Mojo, Mixmag, Enemy, Rolling Stone, Select, Specs, Spin, and The Wire, among others. In the Village Voices Paz and Job Critics poll for 1995. At the 1995 Icelandic Music Awards, Post received the award for Album of the Year. Björk was also awarded Artist of the Year, Female Singer of the Year, Composer of the Year, and was nominated for Songwriter of the Year. Additionally, Army of Me received the Song of the Year award, with Isobel also being nominated. She also received the Best Female Award at the 1995 MTV Europe Music Awards and Best International Female at the Rockjournen Awards. Björk was also nominated for the Nordic Council Music Prize. In 1996, she received her second Best International Female Solo Artist Award at the 16th Brit Awards. She received the same distinction at the Danish Music Awards, the International Dance Music Awards, and the Italian Music Prize. In 1996, Post was nominated for Best Alternative Music Album at the 38th Annual Grammy Awards, was awarded an IFPI Platinum Europe Award, and the ASCAP Vanguard Award given by the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. Commercial performance. Mostly successful in Europe, Post reached the top 10 of several countries, including Australia, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Post also reached the second spot of the now-defunct European Top 100 Albums chart. With the album, Björk edged closer to the US pop mainstream, charting at number 32 in the Billboard 200, almost 30 places higher than debut's peak position. The album also received an enthusiastic reception from college radios. Post also charted at the top 40 in Hungary and Japan. The album was certified platinum in Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States and Europe IFPI, and gold in Sweden and New Zealand. In 2007, the Washington Post reported that Post had sold 810,000 units in the United States according to Nielsen SoundScan. As of 2015, Post has sold 846,000 copies in United States according to Nielsen SoundScan. Legacy. Post is widely regarded as one of the greatest albums of the 1990s. The album has been included in numerous publications' lists of the best albums of the decade. Later reception to the album has also been generally positive. Retrospectively, Slant Magazine's Eric Henderson argued that Post will likely always remain the Björk album that most successfully sustains her winning balance of experimental whimsy and solid pop magic, while Heather Phares of AllMusic wrote that the record was not simply debut redux and concluded, the work of a constantly changing artist. Post proves that as Björk moves. Celebrating the album's 20th anniversary, the British magazine Enemy described it as a masterful matching of hard, up-to-the-minute beats with complex, personal lyrics about the rush and rage of being a modern urban woman. American writer Tom Moon included Post in his 2008 reference book 1000 Recordings to Hear Before You Die. The album's influence has been identified as being increasingly palpable on the contemporary music landscape, and later reviews of the album also make note of the timeless aspect of the music. According to Up McCapper, Post dropped and shifted the status quo on how to produce and promote experimental music. Writing for the Daily Review, James Rose wrote in 2015, Post is where mainstream music could have gone. While modern chart music hasn't gone there entirely, she undoubtedly helped broaden the playing field. The album stands today as a body of work that still informs the more marginal artistic fringes of modern music and reminds us how narrow and staid. In 2008, Stereogum released a compilation of cover versions in homage to the album, titled Enjoyed, a tribute to Björk's Post. It features Dirty Projectors, Liars, Ziu, High Places, and Atlas Sound, among other artists. Critics lists Vibe included the album in its 1999 list of the 100 essential albums of the 20th century. Slant Magazine considered it the second best album of the decade in a 2011 list, only behind Björk's next release, Homogenic. Writing it is her most scatterbrained work to date, but it's tied together flawlessly by Björk's singular whimsicality. In 2003, Pitchfork listed it as the 20th best album of the decade, with William Morris writing, few artists on this list could rival Björk in terms of innovation, vision, talent, and high-yield experimentation, and Post was the record to establish this. In a 2012 article, Paste considered Post to be the 64th best album of the decade, with Ryan Reed stating, "No Björk album is as weird or weirdly wonderful as 1995's Post, a dizzying whirlwind of sonic textures and stylistic shifts that demonstrates every facet of her ever-expanding bag of tricks. Post was ranked at number 376 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list, with the publication praising its utter lack of musical inhibition, and ranked at number 289 on the 2020 updated list. The American publication Consequence of Sound placed the album at number 79 on their 2010 list of the top 100 albums ever, with Harry Painter writing Björk is one of few artists who could put out an album juxtaposing blistering electro-pop with big band, club-ready tribal dance with down-tempo trip-hop, and find both critical and commercial success. In 2015, Post placed on number 69 on Spin's list of the 300 best albums of the past 30 years, claiming that Björk's fearless plunge into styles is matched by the aplomb with which she bears her anxieties and aspirations. Also in 2008, FNAC placed the album at number 246 in its list of the 1,000 in an unordered list of 500 essential albums compiled for Vanity Fair in 2013. English musician Elvis Costello included Post and mentioned Hyper Ballad as a highlight of the record. In the album's entry of the Women Who Rock, the 50 Greatest Albums of All Time list of 2012, Rolling Stone felt Björk's artistic stature grew by yards in the course of this strange, affecting work, by turns harshly industrial, meditative, and neon jubilant. The information regarding lists including Post is adapted from acclaimed music, except track listing. Personnel. Credits adapted from Post's liner notes. Musicians. Technical personnel. Artwork. Charts. Certifications and sales.